This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A new federally funded report on how a landfill search for the remains of 2 Indigenous women can happen is complete. It's expected to include a timeline of just how long the search would take. As the CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports, this news comes on the heels of 2 human rights complaints from one of the victims' families.
For more than a year, Cambria Harris has done everything possible to make sure her mom, Morgan, is not forgotten. She's fighting to bring her body home to bury.
It's frustrating living that nightmare every week.
But knowing her remains are still sitting somewhere in a landfill outside the city is a pain she lives with every day.
You know, something as simple as taking my trash out, like that's hard for me to do, knowing that it's going to end up in a landfill, that I'm contributing to that I'm fighting for.
Harris says the governments have failed her family and Indigenous women by not searching the landfill for her mom and Mercedes Myron, victims of an alleged serial killer.
1 year of sitting here and waiting, 1 year of no answers, 1 year of words but no resolution and no actions.
And a refusal to search by the former PC government. It's now the basis of a human rights complaint by Harris and family advocate Robin Johnston.
So this is outright discrimination. It's systemic discrimination through policy and procedure or lack thereof.
The PCs rolled out full-page newspaper ads and billboards leading up to the October election, saying if re-elected, a search would not happen.
It's distressing to know that someone would be so open and brazen about making those kinds of discriminatory comments to the point where they're willing to spend funds on those billboards and not put resources towards the vulnerable people. Their system is actively failing.
A second complaint was also filed against the current NDP government for a lack of action.
It's saying no more. We're not taking it anymore. Do something.
Premier Wab Kinew says his government remains steadfast. A search will happen.
As I've said in the other comments that I've made on this issue, you will see us move forward in the first half of this year.
Another report on how a search can happen, along with a potential timeline, is complete.
You're searching for your loved one at the end of the day, and you're searching for human remains, and that's a very, very serious thing to have to go through.
While a search is what she wants, she knows it will take a toll. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The City of Winnipeg wants to know how much of the historic Alexander Docks can be salvaged as it looks to redevelop the site. A request for proposals on the city's website seeks a contractor for an engineering assessment. The assessment would identify parts of the current dock structure that could be used for a new docking structure for public use, mooring boats and launching kayaks and paddle boats. The contractor might also recommend full demolition of the dock, which was built by the federal government back in the 1920s. The Manitoba NDP pledged to end chronic homelessness, yet it is now scaling back housing promises made by the previous PC government. A spokesperson for the NDP confirmed funding to build 300 social housing units is being cut by $6 million, from $13 million to $7 million. The government says the Tories didn't have that extra $6 million budgeted, leaving the new government no choice but to scale back plans. It was last February when former PC Minister Rochelle Squires promised to not only build the new units, but also make 400 existing ones affordable with rent subsidies. Rent subsidies announced by the NDP in December cover only 250 units. Housing advocates are disappointed.
We need housing today, we needed housing yesterday, we need housing tomorrow. And the need is great. The ability for development of nonprofit housing to contribute to economic growth in the province is also something that's really critical for governments to recognize. And every day that we wait to build more housing, it becomes more expensive, and we don't get to benefit from that investment.
The NDP says it is committed to building 700 units in the future. It says more announcements will come in this year's budget. Members of Winnipeg City Council want the province to consider banning hookah lounges. A motion passed at City Hall today asked the province to amend the law around indoor smoking. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, hookah lounge owners say they're being unfairly targeted.
This is what some members of Winnipeg City Council want to ban: people consuming shisha indoors. Owners of Winnipeg hookah lounges come largely from Middle Eastern and South Asian communities. They say talk of an outright ban amounts to discrimination.
The recommendation before you specifically targets a marginalized ethnic community.
Lawyer Troy Harwood-Jones represents 9 hookah lounge owners. He pointed out Manitoba's indoor smoking ban makes no reference to shisha, but includes exceptions for places like tobacconists and vape shops.
Why is this ethnic community being targeted for a ban when differential and better treatment is provided to other people?
Councillor Evan Duncan brought forward the proposed ban in response to concerns about the health impacts of consuming shisha indoors.
Can you tell me perhaps how we can safely consume a tobacco or tobacco-like product?
That concern was echoed by Neil Johnston of the Manitoba Lung Association.
The WHO estimates that 1 hour of a 1 hour hookah session is equivalent approximately to smoking 100 cigarettes.
In the end, the committee backed away from imposing an immediate ban. Instead, they passed a motion calling on the province to amend the legislation, adding shisha to the list of prohibited products, along with tobacco, cannabis, and vape products. Councillor Duncan says the province could still include an exception for hookah lounges.
If they choose to add herbal shisha onto the list and then give an exemption, that's up to them.
The motion asking the province to amend the law still needs council approval. They will vote on it next week. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A former police chief says it's time to change the policy around use of force. This comes after the death of a 19-year-old international student, a man from Nigeria who was shot while Winnipeg police went to assist him with a mental health crisis. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association found there has been a steady increase in police-involved deaths over the past 20 years. Cash Heed, a former West Vancouver police chief, says the protocols police use when dealing with people in crisis were developed in the 1960s, and they need to be updated.
Police officers are facing more people that have emotional health issues out there than we ever have before. We're responding and we're defaulting to a policy which is needs to be redone right at the top level, right at the federal government for the criminal code.
Heed says many police chiefs across Canada are not progressive enough to make the necessary changes. One person was found dead after a house fire in the 300 block of College Avenue. When Winnipeg fire and paramedic crews arrived at the multi-family home just after 1 this morning, they found heavy smoke and flames. They managed to put the fire out within an hour. That's when crews found the body of a person who had died. 2 other people who lived in the building were taken to hospital in unstable condition. Others stayed warm inside a Winnipeg transit bus. The city's emergency social services team is helping find temporary accommodations for the families. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The province says sexual assault survivors deserve support, no matter where they live. The NDP promised during last fall's election to create a province-wide strategy. As the CBC's Ian Fraser reports, the government says it is making progress.
A response to sexual assault that's rooted in community.
We understand that culturally safe care extends beyond a clinical setting and needs to be accessible and feel safe for those who are utilizing it.
Survivors of sexual assault won't need to visit a hospital for help anymore. 2 social service organizations, Clinic and Kinesic, now offer medical treatment and other crisis services.
This new funding is instrumental in giving survivors autonomy of choice in their decision in where they want to access services.
This was actually promised by the former Progressive Conservative government last spring. It began operating in the fall, and since then, without any advertising, 38 survivors have been helped.
Many of whom have told us they would not otherwise have sought care. That is profound. And for that, we are really grateful.
The health minister says this program will support the NDP's election promise of creating a provincial strategy for sexual assault nurse examiners. Making this care available in rural and northern communities won't be easy. The Tories tried to develop 24/7 care at the Health Sciences Centre in 2022, but months later, a third of the casual nursing pool quit, blaming a lack of staff. Now, those shortages have been addressed, but it only helps Winnipeg.
There's more work to be done, but certainly Manitobans deserve, survivors deserve to get the quality care that they need in a timely way, no matter where they live across the province.
The nurses' union is optimistic.
I think a provincial program is going to be amazing, and I can't wait for it to roll out. But I think that it's not going to progress as quickly as some would like it to.
As for when that might happen, the government offered no timeline. It says it's hired 3 of the 7 nurse examiners it needs. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Canada's overall inflation rate ticked back up to 3.4% in December, according to the latest numbers from Statistics Canada. Analysts say it's evidence that the road to curbing inflation is going to be bumpy. CBC's Nisha Patel reports.
The basics cost Canadians even more in December. Rent and the interest on mortgages. Groceries and gas prices all up compared to a year ago. It helped inflation heat back up to 3.4%.
This will certainly, give the Bank of Canada pause, as it indicates we're not out of the woods yet on inflation.
Some prices are falling as consumers rein in their spending. Travel services cost less, and so do home entertainment systems.
We have seen very clear slowing in the economy. For instance, if you look at GDP, it basically hasn't grown in the last 9 months.
The Bank of Canada wants to see inflation cool before it cuts the interest rates that have Canadians paying more to borrow money. Experts forecast that could come later this year, but the situation is still fragile.
Because things are so volatile, you can't really make very many forecasts.
Conflict in the Red Sea could throw the inflation fight off track. Houthi rebels are attacking cargo ships, disrupting a key shipping route.
A lot of predictability is very, very important in the shipping industry, so it's causing some operational concerns that way.
Shipping costs have spiked since the attack started. Experts say companies could start to feel the strain.
We have those delays in transit times. If that continues, the impact continues to magnify throughout the supply chain.
And while the system isn't as stressed as it was during the pandemic, prolonged tensions could fan the flames of inflation once more.
To me, the single biggest risk is if we had a backup in energy prices.
For now, inflation is still above the Bank of Canada's 2% target. Most analysts predict there won't be any interest rate cuts until June. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
But before June, we should see a warming in the weather, right?
We should hope.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure we can guarantee that. Riley Lachuk joins us now. No watches and warnings.
No watches and warnings tonight, but doesn't mean it's not cold out there. Yeah, another cool and windy one, Janet, and we're expecting, well, not as much wind as we get into the day tomorrow, but certainly this cold sticking around for a few more days yet. Right now in Winnipeg, minus 18 degrees. We hit to minus 16 at the Forks earlier this afternoon. Pressure is falling. We're seeing a little bit of ice crystals, a little bit of light snow still falling in parts of southern Manitoba this evening. We should see that tapering off as we get into the evening and into the night tonight. So looking at satellite radar, not a lot to see because we still do have the radar station outside of Winnipeg down, so can't see much on there, but we do have a little bit of flurry activity around the Riding Mountain region and just some scattered cloud cover. And really that's what we're expecting as we get into the night tonight. Most of this flurry activity tapering off as we get into the early morning. Starting tomorrow with cloud cover and some sunny breaks even. First thing in the morning, expect a bit more sunshine through tomorrow than we've seen over the last couple of days, that's for sure. For the rest of Wednesday, cloudy with sunny breaks. Thursday brings us some more precipitation moving off of Hudson Bay across northern Manitoba. We'll talk amounts on that in just a second, but certainly otherwise not a lot to write home about even as we get through Thursday. Maybe some flurries through the evening Thursday into Friday. In northern Manitoba, some of the snow we're expecting over the next couple of days here shouldn't really amount to much, 2 to 5 centimeters generally. This model putting a little bit more along the Hudson Bay coast, so keep that in mind as we get through the next couple of days here. The winds today, I know another strong day wind-wise, and we did see also some visibility issues out on the highways and some of the open areas through the afternoon and the morning today as well. We'll see that improving as we get through the night tonight. You can see here, as we start the day tomorrow, winds really dying off out of the northwest at about 10 through southwestern Manitoba and through the Winnipeg region as well. So really not going to see much in terms of winds. Could see a little bit as we get through the afternoon tomorrow, but dipping off once again as we get into the afternoon commute tomorrow. So minus 22 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. We're looking at a mainly cloudy sky, winds tapering off out of the northwest, 10 to 15 kilometers an hour. Tonight, tomorrow morning, much the same. Sunny breaks starting the day, minus 21 degrees first thing, and by the afternoon tomorrow, sunny breaks and minus 17. We should see a little bit more sun than cloud through the afternoon tomorrow. At least we're hoping for that anyway. Thursday, some overnight flurries into Friday morning, a high of minus 18, minus 14 for your Friday with a sun cloud mix and a little bit of wind. The south winds gusting to 50 on Saturday, so it could be another windy one as we head through the weekend as well. A high of minus 17 degrees with increasing clouds. Janet, things looking up from there, but we do have maybe some more snow in the forecast. I'll go through that coming up a little bit later.
Okay, thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
So as you know, extreme cold has been blanketing our region for a number of days now. It's been a jolt to all of us, especially after the mild start we had to winter. Imagine moving here in the middle of this cold snap without ever experiencing anything like it before. Grant Hamilton is the Director of Marketing and Communications with Brandon University. Hi, Grant. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I understand Brandon University welcomed dozens more international students this month. Where did most of them come from?
Yes, we had quite a large cohort for us of students, international students starting in January, about 80, and about 80% of those came from Ghana, Nigeria, Caribbean, a few from South America. So places where, minus 30 is not just the realm of the unusual, but almost science fiction.
Of course, you'd warned them that it gets cold here. Of course, they knew that.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we send out a newcomer's guide to every international student, helping them acclimate to everything that's different about Canada. So bus schedules, bank accounts, and of course, we mentioned temperature. And but when you read it, it may sound like one thing. When you experience it, it's certainly something else.
It certainly is. What kind of reaction have you heard from these students?
Burr. A lot of people, people are surprised. I'm surprised every year that it's as cold, and it gets as cold as it does, as quickly as it does. We all hear the warnings, frostbite can be a couple of minutes, but if you're not prepared and you don't have the right gear, that can be really dangerous. So we had some students, as we do every year, that didn't have the right coats, don't have the right toques, and didn't have any good way to go and get them. So that's something that we were quite concerned about. We put out the call to our community, and our community has responded in spades. We've had a wonderful reaction of coats, toques, mitts, gloves coming in to help students get through this cold snap the way that all of us have to get through it.
I suppose even if they'd purchased what they thought was appropriate winter clothing, it really wouldn't have been made for this climate.
Well, absolutely. I can't imagine they're selling great winter gear in suburban Africa. I just don't. I don't think that's possible to purchase there. And so students come prepared. And if they come in the fall, it's one thing. You might have a coat or a jacket that's good for the fall. And as it gets a little colder, you might realize, actually, I need to get something that's warmer. And you'll have time to go out and buy it. But when you step off a plane and it's January 3rd and the wind's howling and the snow is flying, there's no way for you to walk up to the store. You're doing all you can to walk to school and to get to your classes. So that's where it's almost a temporary solution. We know that the students will be able to purchase something that maybe fits them a little bit better, meets their style a little bit better. But right now they had no way to get to the store, and they haven't learned the ins and outs of Brandon yet. So this gets them to and from class, to and from home, and settled into the Manitoba winter.
Are there still items you need?
I have been so impressed with our community. We have tons of jackets, we have tons of toques, mitts, gloves, but we can always use more. We know this is something that's going to happen every year, every January, for as long as winter happens and as long as we welcome international students. So that's every January. So people are more than welcome to come down and drop off if they have good, clean, some use left in it yet winter gear. Our International Activities Office is in the basement of the Mackenzie Building right here on campus, and they're more than happy to take it in.
Grant Hamilton, Director of Marketing and Communications at Brandon University, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
After a history-making win, Donald Trump wasn't celebrating today. He was headed back to court to face this woman. Back to court in New York City to face potentially millions of dollars in damages. We'll have the latest after the break. This could be disappointing news if you're a bargain shopper looking to save money on high grocery bills. CBC News has learned Loblaws right across the country will no longer offer 50% off deals on perishable items nearing their expiry date. Brett Ruskin has more on the story from Halifax.
One way you can sometimes save money at the grocery store is to go to those discount carts, those bins, to pick up something like this. A sticker, 50% off this head of broccoli. I just picked this up here at this Halifax grocery store under the Loblaws brand. This sticker on this soon to expire piece of broccoli is going to expire itself as well, with Loblaws announcing and sharing details that the 50% off stickers are soon to be 30%. That's at Real Canadian Superstore, that's at Atlantic Superstore, No Frills as well, all of the brands under the Loblaw umbrella. So why is this happening? Well, Loblaw corporate communications managers are telling us that there is a wide range of discounts being offered right now, between 30%, 50%, depending on the store. So this offers some predictability and some consistency nationwide, also consistency between Loblaws and its competitors as well. It says that there is a variety of different discounts offered in-store, in flyer, as well as a Flash Food app. It's called the Flash Food app. That is the one that Loblaws is advising customers to use, but instead of picking out a piece of broccoli like I did, you have to select a box of a variety of different pieces of produce based on a single picture that you have. So there might be a big bag of onions with a cantaloupe and a soft-looking cucumber and things that you may not always want in that purchase. You don't get to see and feel and see what you're buying before you purchase it. You secure it with the app, go and pick it up in store.
You're forced to buy a picture. You can't really see the product, and these products are not as fresh. And so you want, as a consumer, you want to see your product before you actually buy it. You can't see if there's molding or anything like that. You basically have to make that leap of faith before you purchase anything.
And so grocery chains pushing customers to use that app to perhaps save some money, but also get rid of some of its soon to expire produce. The main takeaway, those 50% off stickers that you see on produce that's set to expire soon like this will now read 30% at Loblaws stores all across the country. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
It's been a difficult day of testimony in Saskatchewan at the coroner's inquest into the worst mass stabbing in Canadian history. Police have been going through a minute-by-minute account of the events that left 11 people dead and 17 wounded. An RCMP staff sergeant described the police initial stages of the investigation into what happened on the James Smith Cree Nation and in the nearby town of Weldon, Saskatchewan in September of 2022. Evidence included 911 calls, text messages, witness accounts, and crime scene photos. The officer said the random nature of the killer's attacks made it hard to follow his trail. He also said some of the victims were attacked as they tried to help or protect others. 32-year-old Miles Sanderson went on a rampage that day in September 2022. He died in police custody shortly after his arrest. The political landscape is shifting in Alberta. Provincial NDP leader and former Premier Rachel Notley is stepping down.
The opportunity to serve this party in this province has been the honor of my life.
Notley made the announcement today. It comes nearly 8 months after she lost the 2023 election to Premier Danielle Smith. Notley led the Alberta NDP for nearly 10 years. She served as Premier from 2015 to 2019. She says she'll stay on until the party picks a new leader. Notley didn't say what she will be doing next. Former U.S. President Donald Trump won a historic victory in the first test of his campaign to take back the White House last night. He defeated his closest rivals by an unprecedented 30-point margin to be the choice as a Republican nominee in the Iowa caucuses. CBC's Katie Simpson reports.
The hangover in Iowa is settling in, and no, I am not talking about alcohol. We're talking about the political hangover. Right now, we're inside a diner that is very popular with candidates. Sometimes they stop by here, chat up people who are having coffee, having breakfast, in the hopes of drumming up some last-minute support. That is done now here in Iowa. The campaigns are moving on to the next state, New Hampshire. But Donald Trump is emerging from this state as the clear frontrunner, winning more more than 50% support, a historic level of support as he heads on to that next contest. The race for second is far more competitive. Ron DeSantis edging out Nikki Haley, trying to create some space to be the Trump alternative. That's going to get far more competitive in New Hampshire. Polls there show that Nikki Haley has a lead over Ron DeSantis, and he's pushing ahead with some campaign events in South Carolina, looking to try to look past New Hampshire just in case he doesn't do as well as he's hoping to do. The race for second place is going to be what many people are watching to see if there is a candidate that can emerge as a clear alternative to Donald Trump, who at this point appears to have a very strong grip on his party's base. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Des Moines, Iowa.
But Donald Trump came off the campaign trail today. He instead turned up in a New York City courtroom as jury selection got underway in a defamation trial. CBC's Chris Reyes has the story.
E. Jean Carroll arrived this morning at this New York federal courthouse, as did Donald Trump, to face off in a civil trial that's already found Trump liable for defaming and sexually abusing Carroll in a department store dressing room in the mid-90s. Carroll won that case in May. A jury awarded her $5 million. This second trial, this case will determine damages coming from comments that Trump made back in 2019, accusing Carroll of lying in order to sell books, claiming that he's never met her and denying the rape allegations altogether. He made those comments while he was president. In the courtroom, Carroll's lawyers said that Trump used the biggest microphone in the world to attack her. He's made those comments since.
I have no idea who this woman is. I have absolutely no idea. The whole thing is ridiculous that this is even a case. This should never have happened.
Carroll and Trump sat in the same room, not making any eye contact, as the judge spent the better part of the day with jury selection, explaining to the jurors exactly what their job is. He reminded them that this case is entirely about damages, and that for the purpose of this case, it's already been determined that Trump sexually abused Carroll and defamed her. When the judge said that, Trump very visibly started to shake his head. Trump's team at the beginning of this trial this morning tried to get the judge to dismiss the case altogether. That was quickly overruled. Trump's team also confirmed that they will be calling Donald Trump to the witness stand. He's expected to testify on Monday, with a verdict coming shortly after that. Carroll is seeking $10 million in damages. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
The U.S. military has carried out new strikes against the Yemen-based Houthi militants. They struck anti-ship missiles in a Houthi-controlled part of the country, according to officials. It's the third U.S. action against the Iran-backed rebel group in the past few days. Response to their attacks on Red Sea shipping. The latest assault comes as the Houthis claimed responsibility for an attack against a vessel registered to Malta. U.S. officials also revealed they seized an Iranian weapons shipment to Houthi militants in Yemen. Navy SEALs boarded a boat off Somalia last week and seized warheads, fuel, and other parts for anti-ship missiles. The Houthis say they're attacking shipping in the region in support of Hamas and Palestinians. It has caused significant disruptions to global trade. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy took his appeal for military support directly to global leaders today. He addressed the World Economic Forum in person for the first time. Zelenskyy urged the West to show an united front against Vladimir Putin and Russia. CBC's Briar Stewart has the details.
President Zelenskyy, how did the meeting go, sir?
Very good.
Ukraine's president pleading for more support at a time when commitments by some are wavering. Volodymyr Zelenskyy mingled with the business and political elite in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. In his speech, he urged countries to pass more punishing sanctions.
Putin loves money above all. The more billions he and his oligarchs, friends and accomplices lose, the more likely he will regret starting this war.
Nearly 2 years into Russia's full-scale invasion, there are no signs that Vladimir Putin is prepared to pull back. It's quite obvious, he said. Not only did Ukraine's counteroffensive fail, but the initiative is completely in the hands of the Russian armed forces. In the eastern Ukrainian city of Donetsk, which Russia and local separatists seized back in 2014, a small but apparently enthusiastic group lined up to pledge their support for Putin, who will run and almost certainly win the presidential election again. We are doing this absolutely voluntarily, said one man. We are here to sign our support. And there was another show of cooperation in Moscow from a country that Russia increasingly relies on. North Korea's foreign minister visited the Kremlin. The U.S. and Ukraine have accused Pyongyang of supplying Russia with weapons, including ballistic missiles, which hit Kharkiv earlier this month. Ukraine says it's running short on ammunition and missile defense systems.
We're working to secure bipartisan support for the necessary resources to supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs.
But for now, that $60 billion aid package remains stalled in Congress. As for the European Union, it says Ukraine will receive the $50 billion it promised, even if Hungary keeps blocking the move. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Still ahead, Riley Lachuk with his Manitoba forecast and a look at why more and more people liked thrift shopping for clothing. You're watching CBC. Secondhand fashion is booming in popularity. It's being embraced by more and more people as a trendy way to dress sharp and save money, as you are also environmentally conscious. CBC's Taryn Grant checked in with some keen thrifters.
Hundreds of shoppers flock to this secondhand clothing sale, hoping to find new items for their wardrobes.
Really nice for the environment to be able to have used goods available, you know, especially for the price that it is with like by the pound. It's such an innovative way, and I really like that.
Yeah, so drop it in and spin the wheel.
The price of everything was $6 a pound.
I'm going to call it 4.1 because you have a bag in there. And so that is $24.56.
Organizer Charlotte Genge has been putting on clothing swaps and sales for over a decade. She's noticed a big shift in the past couple years.
I've seen that thrift has just become, it's exploded. And I'm sure it's being talked about a lot. It's something you hear a lot because there are a lot more players entering now. Like, you know, there's online kind of thrift and consignment, and there's a lot more people participating in it, which is great to see. It's become more streamlined, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just mainstream.
This is a side hustle for Genge. But Sarah Sorby has turned clothing resale into a full-time job. Most of her sales are through Instagram, but she also has a few racks at a shop in Halifax's North End, along with several other resellers.
I truly believe that, you know, with secondhand clothing now, it's just as special, or if not more special, than going into a store and buying something. I think that it's really become something that's being embraced by everyone.
Sellers are hoping the used clothing market will only keep growing, with more people making secondhand their first choice. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Dartmouth.
Riley Lachuk joins us now with proof that people are still enjoying themselves in this weather.
You know, if you dress for the weather, it's actually not all that bad outside.
See?
There you go. And I've got some photos to prove it. Let's take a look. So these are a couple that were sent in. Holly snapped this one near Emerson, looking to the south, a shot of the sun there with the reflection. And this one is from the St. Norbert area from Liz, a bit of a spooky morning. Thank you for sending these in. You can always send them to talkback@cbc.ca. I love seeing what your corner of the province looks like. So looking around the country, yeah, the map looks a lot warmer than it did at this time last night. -16 in Edmonton, -8 in Calgary. Remember at the beginning of the week, Calgary, Edmonton, close to the -30 mark and lower. Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Regina, both in the -20s. Even a little bit warmer to the south of us right now. You can see that warmer air is starting to usher its way further east and further south. So we're slowly getting there. -14 in Windsor, -10 in Toronto. This is the region that is seeing some of the cooler temperatures, and by Toronto standards, these are pretty cold for this time of the year. So there you go. -18 in Winnipeg right now, -17 in Morris, -17 in St. Laurent as well. Looking across the western part of Manitoba, -20 in Brandon, right around -20 for the rest of southwestern Manitoba, and that is pretty much where we're at in the north as well. -19 in Thompson, -20 in both Lynn Lake, Island Lake, as well as in Norway House. So tonight we are looking at maybe some snow continuing, but otherwise a mainly cloudy sky across northwestern Ontario. -23s and -24s for this evening into the Winnipeg region. It's still a lingering chance of some light snow through the southeastern corner of the province. -23s tonight, -22 overnight in the city of Winnipeg with cloudy, mainly cloudy skies. We'll start to see some clearing early in the morning. Lingering chance of some light snow as well. Very slim chance for the Swan River region. Most of this still further to the north, areas like the Paw Flin Flon looking at a chance of some light snow tonight. Light snow in Norway House as well as in Island Lake and Gillam. Looking at your forecast for tomorrow, 2 to 4 centimeters of snow coming to Churchill at -18 degrees as well as Norway House. We'll start to see the sun a little bit more as we get into the afternoon tomorrow, especially areas to the south. Dauphin -19 tomorrow. Brandon -19 as well, -17s in Portage la Prairie as well as in Morden Winkler. The southeast looking at temperatures around -16 and -17 for tomorrow with sun and clouds, and this is what we get for northwestern Ontario as well. Temperatures of -17 across northwestern Ontario. Temperatures a lot warmer than this coming up in your 7-day forecast, Janet.
Oh, I love the sound of that. Thank you so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
I could. Movie musicals have been making a big splash at the box office lately, but they're marketing themselves differently these days. They're not promoting that they are, in fact, musicals. CBC's Mashika Salasa looks at why that might be.
We have a new student.
What's up, Katie?
The cliques, the fashion, the famous one-liners.
You could be really hot if you change, like, everything.
Mean Girls is back with new faces hitting new notes. The original Tina Fey, Lindsay Lohan movie came out 20 years ago. Then it hit Broadway as a musical, and now it's a musical on the big screen too.
I love musicals.
Australian Angourie Rice takes on the role of Katie Heron.
I know that this is going to be something really special.
But the trailer doesn't give away that it's a musical, something we're seeing more of.
Mr. Wonka, I can see you're a man of great ingenuity.
The holiday box office winner, Willy Wonka, wasn't loud about marketing itself as a musical either. Then you've got the musical remake of The Color Purple. Even last year's blockbuster Barbie got bit by the musical bug. It seems musicals are back, but with a marketing twist, says this culture writer.
It seems like the film industry has started this trend of not making them known as musicals.
A call likely driven by box office results. This film analyst says musicals just didn't do as well in the last few years.
Right after the pandemic, some of the more serious musicals like West Side Story, Dear Evan Hansen, In the Heights underperformed relative to expectations at the box office.
Still, this critic thinks not marketing the movies as musicals is short-sighted.
Often the movies that are standing the test of time are movie musicals, right? Like it's, you know, The Sound of Music and Grease and Singing in the Rain, all of these movies that we're still talking about however many decades later, and they didn't have to hide that they were musicals.
Marketing aside, more musicals are on the way. Wicked Part 1 is heading to theaters this year, and the musical sequel to The Joker has Lady Gaga set to sing on screen again. Magda Gebre-Selassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Manitoba Egg Days 2024 are kicking off, featuring 60 different speakers. One of them has quite the resume. From high school teacher to rodeo announcer and psychologist. We talked to Brett Gardner about his philosophy of chasing the good next. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. If you follow rodeo or bull riding, you may recognize our next guest's voice or name. Brett Gardner is the reigning Canadian Pro Rodeo Announcer of the Year, a title he's been awarded 11 times. He's received dozens of accolades for his announcing work. But now Brett Gardner is chasing something else. He's chasing the good. That's the title of the presentation he brings to Manitoba Ag Days in Brandon tomorrow. Brett Gardner, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. So much appreciate it.
After years of announcing rodeo and bull riding, I am sure you have stories. Lots of stories. Things that could captivate a crowd at Ag Days. How much of that will you use in your presentation tomorrow?
Well, I think there'll certainly be some. You know, I've been pretty fortunate over the past 20 years to go to some incredible places and be a part of what I refer to as some of the most celebrated Western events in the world. And it's such an honor, but it's so true. There's a lot of stories in there, and we're definitely going to tell some of them. You know, there's certainly be some tales from the road. So excited to do that for sure.
But chase the good. What do you mean when you say chase the good?
Yeah, great question. I love it. And chase the good is something that I try and live by. And for me, it's almost like a mindset, but it came out of a conversation I actually had with my kids, and it started really right at the beginning of COVID when things were kind of shut down, and it was a little more difficult. As you can imagine, somebody who spends a lot of time in the live event industry, and all of a sudden everything came to a halt. And with that, there were times where, geez, I was kind of sad, and I was kind of mad and feeling all the things. And so were my kids a little bit. It was pretty tough. We were all in the house together, and it was such a big change for us. And I said one day, I said, hey, you know what? Sometimes we just got to go chase what's good in the world because it doesn't always find us. We have to be intentional. And that started to be a big conversation in our house. And that's kind of how we started to live our life through that time when we were hanging out at home. And so we became really intentional with what we focused on and what was important to us, and spending time together and getting up in the morning and knowing that we had to go chase what was good, because not always in this world do the good things just come and hit us. And there's lots of sometimes negativity and maybe things that, you know, don't serve us so well. So we have to be intentional in that. So for us, that's really the idea of what we call now the Chase the Good movement. And it's just a movement for us to try and encourage all of humankind to chase what's good in the world.
That sounds like looking for, you know, mental wellness and the positivity. For years, we have talked about getting rid of the stigma surrounding mental illness. How close do you think we are to the day when the toughest among us, the bull riders, the farmers, the cowboys, the firefighters, everybody who's, you know, society thinks is so strong, can talk about their own mental health needs without perceiving that as a weakness or something to feel shame about?
You know, I would like to think we're getting closer. I really do believe that. And I think a lot of the work that I do outside of the Western sports world and announcing world is really trying to do that and try and start to remove those stigmas and open up those conversations and give people permission to maybe be a tick more vulnerable and to talk about what maybe is troubling them. So the other part of my world, I do work as a clinical counselor and spend a lot of time in that mental health and performance space. And I've kind of had a front row seat to see some of those really rugged, tough athletes like our bull riders, but also people like farmers and ranchers who have grown up, you know, generation after generation, where there is a bit of that stigma. There's a bit of that culture component where we just don't talk about those things. Necessarily not because we don't want to, but we maybe just don't know how, or we didn't know how. So I think over the past 2 years, we're starting to have more of those conversations. There's more people that are willing to come to the table to have those conversations. So I'm really, really optimistic. And the Chase the Good Tour is my way to help other people maybe find that little bit of vulnerability, or at least maybe open up their mind a little bit and start planting the seeds when it comes to the conversation that surrounds mental health and wellness.
Well, we're thrilled to have your Chase the Good tour starting in Manitoba. Brett Gardner, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still to come.
The Leaf, transformed into a garden of fresh floral mannequins that you need to experience. Fleur de Ville Voyage. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Well, let's have a look at your 7-day forecast now, and we're expecting these cooler temperatures to stick around for another few days at least through the end of the work week. So -14 for Friday, early morning flurries for Friday, overnight Thursday into Friday, then things take a bit of a change. So bit of a windy weekend on tap, -17 for Saturday, -12 for Sunday, and then Monday we're looking at a high of -9, and then some forecast models indicating that we could see perhaps some accumulating snow. Still a little bit early out for that on Tuesday of next week at -7, something I'll be keeping my eye on over the next few days. Well, there's been a lot of fighting in Washington, D.C., as always.
A lot of fighting. Maybe they should do it like this.
Maybe.
Here's your daily lift. I love it. Washington, D.C. got a lot of snow the past few days, so that inspired the Washington, D.C. Snowball Fight Association. Why don't we have one of those to hold this massive battle at the National Mall? Employees of the National Gallery and the National Air and Space Museum took aim at each other. The Clash of the Titans was called the Battle of Snoppenheimer, reference to the hit movie Oppenheimer. A throwdown for the ages.
So I feel like if we had one of those, we'd win.
Oh, okay, but who would we fight? Would it be Winnipeg against like everybody else, or Manitoba against everybody else?
We'd figure it out.
We'd figure it out. We know
minor
our snow.
details.
Have a great night. See you at 11.